Andy Jennings from ejsllc.com. This video is another in my practice session series for the Red Hat Certified Specialist in Linux Diagnostics and Troubleshooting exam EX342. Before I dive in, I want to thank returning subscribers for watching another video, as well as invite anyone who's watching, if you haven't subscribed, to click the subscribe button. Also, a reminder that these are my practice sessions for the exam. My exam is just under a week away. As a matter of fact, I think it's today's Sunday, it's on a Thursday, so it's 4 days away. So I'm going through all of the posted objectives from Red Hat and am trying to either explain the concept behind the objective or do some exercises about whatever the objective is. And at the end of the video, I'll do a little self-assessment, and hopefully at this point I'll feel pretty confident with the objective and feel ready for the exam. But if not, I still have a few days to do a little last-minute brushing up and trying to get some information back to the front side of my brain, so to speak. That being said, these should not be considered tutorials or used as authoritative information. I myself am still learning. I try to have the information accurate because hopefully at this point I have not learned incorrect information for the exam. But since I am still learning, these should not be used as authoritative information or any type of tutorial material. I put these out on the internet, these practice sessions, in hopes of those that are also preparing for the exam might see some of the stuff that I'm doing in a final practice session and get some ideas of things that they can create on their own to help with their preparation. So going into the identity and fix authentication, or identify and fix authentication issues set of objectives, we're going to look at identify and fix pluggable authentication module PAM issues. So, PAM it's actually kind of a nifty little thing. I'm not a master of PAM. I can't go deep dive into it, but basically what it is, it's a subsystem specifically for authentication things that applications that developers make can utilize to handle authentication for their application. So rather than the application developer having to create all the different authentication bits, it can leverage the modules within the PAM environment to help handle authentication. And let me go into lab server, do lab server 6. I don't think I've picked on lab server 6 in a while. It will become root. I think I can view PAM stuff without being root, but I might as well just become root for the giggles of it. And let's go into etc pam.d. Now within here you have different configuration files, and the way this works, let's look at SSHD. So let me cat SSHD. So what we have here, a PAM configuration file is going to have 3 or more fields in it. The first field is the particular action, and that can be authentication, that can be checking an account, that can, I can't remember off the top of my head what password and session mean in particular. Probably want to look at some of my review stuff, just try to get that back in my head, but it's a particular action that needs to occur. Then the second column it's like an action that PAM needs to take. So basically when a PAM module runs, it's either going to return this has passed or it has failed. I think like done or die are the two states. I may be misremembering that, but it's basically does it pass or does it not pass. And for something, I'm going to come back to Substack and include, but something that is required, basically what's going to happen here is PAM will say if this passes or not, and if it does, great, then I believe it will return back to the application and say, hey, you've this has passed. Allow the thing that is trying to use your application to do whatever it is supposed to do. If it fails, it will continue going through all of the requireds and then ultimately return failure for what's going on. You have optional, which I think with optional, if that passes, the PAM stops going through the configuration, and if it fails, PAM really doesn't care. There's another one, I think it's called requisite, and that's one of these that if it passes, well, if it fails, PAM stops. I can't remember. I think if it passes, PAM stops going through the configurations and says it's done. We'll look at the man page, and I'll kind of use that as a quick little test to see if I've remembered correctly. I have a feeling that I haven't. PAM is not something I am super familiar with. I mean, I understand conceptually what's going on. The other two here, this include and substack, the difference between the two, well, first you'll notice that the required and optionals, they're actually looking at modules, this whatever.so. The include and substack are going to other configurations within PAM, and include basically says run all the stuff in this other configuration. Substack will do something similar, but I believe substack will run whatever is there and then return, pass fail based off of the entirety of the substack versus just run everything that's there and then whatever happens. I may be wrong about that. That's something that I want to brush up on. And as I said, these are the actual modules, which I believe live by default. It's either etc lib64 security. Let's take a look at that. All right, that doesn't exist. So I think it's actually user lib64 security. There they go, or there they are rather. So user lib64 security is where all those modules are. And then the other configuration things like you see password auth and post login there within etc pamd. You can pass some values to some of the PAM modules, and that I have a feeling on the exam, if we have to pass stuff to a PAM module, it's probably going to be something that's fairly well documented. For example, let's take a look. There may be a man page for PAM SE Linux, and there is, and it shows that these are the options that can be passed to that module. And I think for that one it had open and then environment params. Let's see a couple of things for debugging. If there's something going wrong with authentication, PAM tends to write to var log secure. If I were to tail secure, well, there's nothing here for PAM. Let me see if I can generate an error here. So let me do another tab. We're going to SSH some user at lab server 6, and we're going to fail on authentication. Fail it again. I think one more time, and it'll basically say stop. Yeah, all right. So now let's tail secure again. And there we go. We see PAM Unix. And that, if we look back at the etc pam.d sshd configuration file, we actually don't see pam.unix here, but I believe that's going to be a part of the password auth. And what it's basically saying here is, this check, we don't know what user this is. So let's take a look at that etc, or actually let's do ls-l etc pam.d password auth. That might be a symlink to something. Yeah, and so that's actually going to a authselect thing, which I'll talk about in just a second. So let's cat password auth, and now we see something very similar to what we saw with SSHD, but it is far more. And it eventually got to PAM Unix, and obviously that failed with the authentication type. I believe, let's see, I think there's a PAM echo. Yeah, this one's kind of nifty in the fact that if you needed to, you can add this to a PAM configuration file. And it's kind of like if you're writing a script and you put little echo messages every once in a while saying, hey, this is where we are in the script, or we have just passed this thing in the script. You can do that and help with the debugging process to see where it's actually failing. So, let's try that. Not sure how well this is going to work, but we'll see. First of all, we're going to copy SSHD to root sshd.back. just in case. And I would recommend, if you are working with PAM on the exam and you're having to change a configuration file, to do something like that, just in case everything goes wrong. You have some way of getting back to the state that you were once in. And let's take a look at that PAM echo one more time. I think we can just do a message. It was path message. I thought we could just do just a message. Well, let's see what happens. So SSHD, I'll do auth, tab, no spaces, optional. Probably doing this wrong, but let's see what happens here. All right, so let us do another failure here, and let's see what we see in our var log secure. And we might not see anything. And we see the failure, but I don't see where the echo was happening. So that's actually something that I, between now and Thursday, my exam, I'm going to practice using PAM echo a couple of times, because I think that can be potentially a useful tool for troubleshooting with PAM. The other thing, let's say that PAM has been mangled for SSHD. What we can do, RPM QA open SSH server. What we can do is the RPM-V, and we see that it's verifying that that package, and this has been changed. So really kind of the best way to fix this is, since you're generally not going to be messing with PAM, is to get rid of the PAM configuration file and then reinstall the package, because that will restore to whatever defaults the package needed for PAM. A couple of other things you can do from like a backup perspective. Authselect, or let me ls back into this. Authselect is a tool that can be used to do some PAM configurations for some specific scenarios. Now, it will not alter things like SSHD or sudo or other application-specific things. Rather, it will alter things such as password auth and system auth, and the higher, I guess higher level would be the right name of that, higher level stuff. So if I were to do auth select, just hit auth select, and that'll give us, you can see the different profiles. Auth select list. We have minimal SSSD. There should be an option to show what the current profile is. Current. So auth select current. Oh, so it's set with SSSD and those particular enabled features. So let's do this. Is there an SSSD one? Shadow utils. What I was wanting to do was make a change to something, change the auth select profile, or change one of the options for, like, you can turn on make home dir for SSSD and see what happens with that. Oh well, that might not be a thing that I can do, but what you can do, notice there are some backup commands. So what we can do, auth select, look up backup list. I don't think there's oh, there actually was something that was made on the 2nd of November. Wonder if that's one of everything. So I thought when you do backups, it's going to be specific for whatever your profile is that you've selected. For example, I can do auth select SSSD. I'm clearly misremembering here. All right, let's take a look at the man for auth select in case I'm asked to make a backup file. Unless there's, see, -- backup. That's when you're selecting. So you're backing up system files before you select the profile. Okay, I see. So the backup will happen when if you make a change. So let's say that I'm going to do auth select. We're going to select minimal. We'll specify backup name, and we're going to say before minimal. And let's tail var lib auth select backups before minimal. I see. All right, so this makes sense. So it basically captures, if I were to do ls, it doesn't capture everything, but it captures several of these that are actually symlinks over to, if I do ls-l, that's going to be symlinked to auth select stuff. Okay, and then if I want to restore this, auth or let me verify authselect current. We see it's minimal with no enabled features, and we're going to try to restore this authselect. Oh, it shows that in the list. That's nice. Restore. Oh, I can just tap complete that. All right, so if I do authselect current, puts us back to SSSD. All right, that is quite useful. Maybe a way to do a backup is take an existing thing, maybe add some innocuous thing to it, take the backup, then remove the innocuous thing, which would bring you back to the original state, take the backup, something like that to be able to make it work. What else did I want to hit with PAM? I'm trying to think. So look at the objective itself. Identify and fix problems. I'm not going to really be able to, I mean, I could potentially create a problem and try to fix it, but it'll be obvious what I'm doing. I mean, the challenge that I do know with PAM is knowing that PAM itself is the problem. And really, you're just going to have to look at that varlog secure file. Off the top of my head, I'm thinking of a debug module that could be used with PAM. I'm vaguely remembering that from some of my training. That's something that I do want to review to get back into the front side of my head. But I guess if I was in quote the real world and I had nothing to go with, I would be using varlog secure and possibly using rpm-v to see if things have changed. I did want to look at pam.conf, which will give you a description of the types of actions, auth, password, session, all that good stuff. And then it also gives a description of, and I know I wasn't using the right term for the, control values. That's what those are called. For example, required failure of this will ultimately lead to the PAM API returning failure, but only after the remaining stacked modules have been evoked. And was it requisite? Okay, so once it returns a failure, control is given back to the application or whatever the other stack is. And then let's see if I was right about substack. Includes all. Okay. Which of course I'm not telling you what I'm thinking with that, but reading that makes sense. So probably on the exam I will be utilizing some man pages and such, because I don't see the value of trying to memorize all of this, but I think it's important for Red Hat exams to know enough to either, when you're presented with a problem, if it's not something that you have been eat, breathe, drinking, and you just know off the top of your head this is exactly what to do, you know how to reference stuff quick enough. So I think for this objective, identify and fix pluggable authentication module issues, this isn't a total fail by any means, but this is obviously not my absolute strongest area. So, and that tends to be the truth with some of the not always the latter part of what's on the objective list, but certain things I tend to hit at the end sometimes are some of my weaker stuff, because when I review, I try to get it back to the front of my head. Again, not to try to memorize stuff, because that's not going to be effective, but to get the reference and a part of my my brain storage that will be more easily retrieved, versus things like, earlier in the objective, a lot of the networking stuff. I mean, I'm troubleshooting that kind of thing all the time, so that'll be relatively easy to retrieve. Troubleshooting PAM issues is not something I do all the time, so I obviously work with it throughout the entirety of my preparation, but during the final bits, I kind of review that again to get it back to the front of my head. If you found the video useful, make sure you do click like, and I want to thank returning subscribers again for watching another video. And if you're watching and you haven't subscribed, do click that subscribe button and ring the bell so you know when videos are made available. Thank you for taking the time to watch, and I'll see you the next time.